Shh. It's that time, y'all. Time for Big Boys Boxing.
If you think I'm a pussy, I'm a punk, you tell me right now. Because listen, I am the baddest nigga you ever fucking meet.
So that'll give a bit of energy.
Kia ora team and welcome back to Big Boys Boxing. So the news is the proposed January 30th date for the rematch between Dillian Whyte and Alexander Povetkin for the interim WBC title and the mandatory position is off for now. However, the reason is Alexander Povetkin needs more recovery time. As many of you know, he picked up COVID-19. He's been in hospital a couple of times and struggling to recover from it, so he needs more time. Now, I'll leave a couple of articles in the description, somewhat conflicting, some of them. Eddie Hearn's pretty much saying the fight's off, but Andrei Ryabinski, the promoter of Alexander Povetkin, is saying everything's agreed and they're just looking at a later date, being early March or end of March, for this immediate rematch to happen. Now it seems like Dillian Whyte is not happy to wait, which is a choice he has made, and he has mentioned some names that he does want to fight. They're all PBC fighters: Andy Ruiz Jr., Luis King Kong Ortiz, and Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder. They're all good fights. I would love to see Dillian in the ring with any of those guys. Now there is still mediation going on between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder for a potential fight early next year, so that may be out of the question. A lot hinges on what Anthony Joshua is able to do, whether he's able to fight Tyson Fury for the undisputed heavyweight title, or whether he's going to have to fight Alexander Usyk, who is the WBO mandatory. But also, what's going on with the mediation of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. So potentially Deontay Wilder may be out of the question. King Kong Ortiz or Andy Ruiz, I'd love to see Dillian in the ring with any of those guys. Andy Ruiz has said he wants to fight Luis Ortiz, but he wants a tune-up fight first, and he was looking at Chris Arreola. The COVID situation has stalled that out. So I think Andy Ruiz will want another fight before he faces somebody like Dillian Whyte. So potentially that one's out as well. Luis King Kong Ortiz, I think, would be the most likely candidate to take a fight with Dillian Whyte. And that's a great fight. The fight I would like to see most for those three choices, it's a kind of toss-up between Wilder and Ruiz for me. I'd probably like to see Andy Ruiz, actually. I think that's probably the most competitive fight, and one I'd like to see for Dillian Whyte. Now the problem, if he does take one of those fights, or manages to get one of those fights, is, from where I'm sitting, that would void his immediate rematch contract with Alexander Povetkin. Therefore, he wouldn't be able to obtain the WBC mandatory position again and the interim title. Now I'm wondering why Dillian Whyte is thinking along these lines. He went to so much trouble to try and get that WBC mandatory position. A lot of rigmarole, a lot of problems he caused himself by not taking fights with Luis Ortiz and Dominic Brazil to try and get that position. He ended up fighting Oscar Rivas for the interim title and mandatory position. But I found it a bit funny that he's mentioned Luis Ortiz's name, because he did turn down a fight against Luis Ortiz to get the second mandatory position, and he could have fought Deontay Wilder for the WBC title when Luis Ortiz did as the mandatory, but now he wants to fight him. Also, I'm wondering, he wanted the fight against Wilder so bad while he was the champion. Now that Wilder doesn't have the belt, he's not really that interested in going the WBC route, maybe? Maybe he doesn't quite want the Tyson Fury smoke as much as he wanted the Deontay Wilder smoke. Who knows? But that's how I see it anyway. If Dillian does take a fight against somebody else, I think that's going to void his immediate rematch contract, and Alexander Povetkin will be free to do whatever he wants. I wouldn't say that Povetkin won't fight Whyte anyway. He's the kind of guy who would stand by his word and let him still have a rematch even if the contract is void. Everything's sorted out, the money's good for both guys, and it's a good fight. But yeah, interesting. Dillian Whyte doesn't seem to be extremely focused on trying to get that mandatory position back, avenge his loss. He's not willing to wait. But on the other hand, kudos to him for wanting to get back in the ring in a competitive fight against any of those guys. So it's a bit of a wait and see what happens. See if any of these fighters bite on an offer, if they produced one from Dillian Whyte and possibly Eddie Hearn. Now remember, Dillian Whyte isn't signed to Matchroom, so he can work with PBC. He's his own manager. He's only working with Matchroom on a fight-by-fight basis. It's always been the case with him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let us know if you think Dillian should wait and take that Povetkin rematch in March, or should he jump in the ring with one of these other guys, potentially risk his shot at regaining his mandatory status? And if so, who would you like to see him fight? Looking forward to reading your comments. Hope you've enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll catch you in the next one. I'm Jono from Big Boys Boxing, and I'm out. See you!